Okay, gentlemen, you ready?
Betcha.
The meeting of the Board of Ellis County Commissioners will now come to order. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Bobby, if you could call the roll.
Commissioner Dean Hazelhorst.
Present.
Chair Butch Schleier.
Present.
Commissioner Neil Younger.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Okay. And order of business, there's no changes to the order of business or executive sessions, I do not believe. Prior minutes. Commissioners, did you get to review the minutes from September
Yes, sir.
13th?
Yes.
Questions?
Okay, minutes stand as submitted. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll make a move to approve the consent agenda, items A through G.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0. Any issues from persons not on the order of business? Okay, no one's coming up here. Monthly department reports. Commissioners, did you review those reports?
Yep.
Questions, comments?
A lot of activity in the county, and they did a good job, as always, putting them together.
Absolutely.
Have some good talent.
Yep.
Okay, our next agenda item is the solid waste job trailer. Vern? And Commissioners, I move to open the public hearing for the potential sale of the solid waste office trailer. Do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0. Vern?
All right. Good evening, Commissioners. Vern Ruger, Landfill Foreman. As you know, we have completed our new Environmental Services office out there, and now we're no longer in need of the trailer house that's out there. So we actually had a bid from Hess Services come in at $10,000 to buy it from us, and with your approval, we can go ahead and finalize that sale.
Okay. Do you think that was an appropriate offer?
I feel like that was a fair offer for that trailer.
Okay. Commissioners, comments, concerns?
I agree with Vern. I thought that actually surprised me.
Me
It
too.
was a very
Yep.
fair offer. I think it was.
Me too. I thought, get it and go.
And Hess has all the equipment to move it, which helps out on his side, but if you had to hire somebody to move it, that would be enough. So that was a fair offer, I feel.
Okay, do I hear a motion to approve the sale of the trailer?
I move to approve the 2005 solid waste office trailer to Hess Services in the amount of $10,000.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vern. And I will make a motion to close the public hearing regarding the office trailer sales.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 3-0. Okay, our next agenda item will be the 2020 audit. Melissa?
Can we help you?
You're going to go ahead and hand those out. I did.
Just one each.
Yes, everybody gets one, and then the extra copies remain with the county. Good evening. I'm Melissa, and I have with me Alexis Crispin, and she did a lot of work on your guys' single audit. And so she's going to go over the single audit with you guys in a few minutes after we go over the actual audit report. I'm going to have you guys go ahead. There's a loose leaf letter in the audit report, and we're going to come back to that here in just a few minutes, okay? I'm going to have you flip over to page 4, which is your statement of receipts, expenditures, and unencumbered cash balance. Pages 1, 2, and 3 is what we call the audit report. Within the audit report, as you look at it, you'll see that it's an audit report on generally accepted accounting standards. It's also It tells you that you have another separate issued audit report for your financial statements. And then you have a third audit report within here on what they call uniform guidance or single audit. And so that means you had expenditures of federal expenditures over $750,000 for the year 2020. And it's a clean opinion, it's unmodified, meaning that you applied the regulatory basis of accounting in all manners that was appropriate. On page 4, you've already seen these ending unencumbered cash numbers, and so there's not anything unusual within it. I'm just going to highlight just a couple of items as we go down through here. It seems like one of the questions we get asked a lot when delivering audit reports is, how much unencumbered cash balance should we have? Well, back in, several years ago, the rule of thumb was 3 to 6 months of operating expenditures. But things have evolved from then, and so now, really as a commission, you determine how much unencumbered cash you should have. You do the budgeting process, but you do the budgeting process for 5 to 10 years out. So what are your capital needs? What are your equipment needs? What are the building needs? What is your infrastructure needs? And so as you build that in, that really tells you how much unencumbered cash you should have in your reserve funds and also in your general fund from that standpoint. And so the general fund, by design, has actually increased from the previous year. It went up from $3.9 million to $5 million. And again, you have some unencumbered cash that you had as a carryover balance when you've been doing your budget for the last couple years to ensure that you have those cash balances for unanticipated needs going into the future. And again, because the general fund operates all funds within the county, that's a good thing. The next line item down is your Special Highway Improvement Fund. And while it looks like this increased from $1.6 million up to $6.7 million, again, you have $5,325,000 of general obligation bonds for future road improvements that were in this fund as of December 31st of 2020 that you're going to expend here during 2021 and 2022. So again, that is not really an increase at this point. Looking down through there, you have some other funds. I'm going to jump you down about 5 line items to your Capital Improvement Reserve Fund. The Capital Improvement Reserve Fund, it can be used for infrastructure, buildings, repairs on buildings and that. At the end of the year, you had a balance of $1,037,591. Right below that, you have your Capital Improvement Reserve Fund. And again, that's for equipment needs, to purchase equipment, software, hardware, that type of thing. And its balance is $3.4 million. Looking down through the rest of it, there's not anything really unusual. You have your sales tax funds that have been set aside as you've levied the sales tax for specific purposes. You are tracking those separate so that you have transparency for the public. You get down to solid waste fund. That's going to be about a third of the way down from the bottom of the page. Ending unencumbered cash balance is $709,966. Again, those are generated by people that are using the solid waste, and they're charged a fee to bring that in, and then you're taking care of the expenses with that. It operates just like a for-profit business would at this point. Then you've got a reserve fund set aside for any equipment needs. And then you have a solid waste post-closure fund. And that is if we need to close a cell out there, if we would, for some reason, would have to close the remaining part of the landfill that we have, then that money has been set aside to do that. Or if there's ongoing operating needs from the landfill, from the closure of it, you have those funds available to operate in that manner. You also have a Drug Enforcement Unit Trust Fund, and then you still have your Oil and Gas Depletion Trust Fund of $425,000 that you could use at your discretion as needed. The audit report includes one of your guys' related municipal entities, and that's the Rural Fire District. And again, at the end of the year, their general fund had $80,969, and then the Special Equipment Fund, which can only be used for equipment purchases, just had $172,000 in that fund at the end of the year. Are there any questions?
I have none.
Okay. If you do not have any, then again, I'm going to flip you back to page 16. As you go through here, there's some notes to the financial statements. A couple things to point out is obviously we had the pandemic in the last year or two. And there's a note disclosure that just says that, hey, we don't know what the overall effects of that will be. At this point, we haven't seen anything negative, but we don't know what the pandemic will have going into 2021 or 2022 for that effect. There was a couple of minor statute violations that we had to note, but again, nothing unusual within there, and that was in note 9 of the financial statements. Getting back to page 16, we have the notes to the financial statements, and this right here is a quick snapshot look at what your debt consisted of as of December 31st of 2020. You have some general obligation bonds that were at $7,040,000 if you look at the very right-hand column. You have revolving loan of about $19,670, and that would be the Munger revolving loan, by the way. And then you have some capital leases, which totaled $1,518,532 at the county's level. If you look at those per year, if you look at both the interest and the principal, if you go back and look at the first column from the left-hand side of the page, you will retire $1,495,189, and everything will be paid off by the year 2030. Are there any questions on that?
The KDHE for the Munger thing, what's their reasoning that we can't just pay that off? Because we talked about that at our meetings quite often.
You have to go back and you have to take a look at what they wrote into it. I believe that if you had the money all set aside to pay off, you might be able to now because you're so far, so many years have transpired since the initial part of it, but they kind of locked it in for a while on most of them. And I haven't looked at that to see what but it does get paid off in 2026, so you are pretty close, whereas you may be able to pay that off this year or next year, but you'd have to ask them.
All right. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. If there's nothing else, we're going to take you clear back to the back of the audit report. We're going to make you go to page 59. On the way to page 59, as promised on page 54, is the audit opinion that goes over the financial statements. On page 56, then, is the audit report that goes over the uniform guidance or the single audit. And then page 59 this right here is your schedule of expenditures of federal awards. And as we'd indicated, you did have what's called a single audit. The county actually expended in total last year federal awards only, that does not include any of the state monies that you were to receive, $6,083,120. Of that total federal expenditures, you pass through to subrecipients, and subrecipients are the school districts, the city, other municipalities such as yours. That was $1,470,103. So you were able to give them the funding, then they had to adhere to the funding as your criteria was set on that. If you go ahead then, page 60 is just notes that your schedule of federal awards was prepared on the regulatory basis. You did not have an indirect cost rate assigned by the state, and then you did not receive any federal awards in the form of non-cash assistance, insurance, loans, or loan guarantees. I'm going to start on your page 61, schedule of findings and question cost. And again, this right here, this report is actually filed with the federal government. They will get a copy of it along with a synopsis on something called a federal audit clearing form. Your report was not in compliance with generally accepted accounting principles, which is okay. You can do the regulatory basis. And so you have an unmodified opinion. Unmodified is the best that you can get. We did not, on internal control over financial reporting, on the report for the financial statements that I talked about, we did have one material weakness that we did need to note, and we'll explain that here in just a moment. No significant deficiencies were identified and no material noncompliance was identified. Along with that, we also issued the report on internal control over the major programs. We did not have any major material weaknesses identified, but there were a couple of significant deficiencies that we did have to identify. So the type of report on compliance then is qualified because there's a couple items noted just to let the readers know that there was additional information within that report. And then your major program that we looked at was the Coronavirus Relief Fund, or you get to call it the SPARK funding, CARES funding, It was called a lot of different names last year, but the official one is coronavirus relief. Then, just to point out, it says, do you, auditee qualifies as a low-risk auditee? No, you do not. And what that means is that you do your financial statements on the basis of regulatory basis. And so that's okay. That's the reason why you do not qualify. Plus, you do not have a single audit in the last couple years. What does that mean? We have to test 40% of your overall transactions versus just 20% of federal expenditures. So we do have to go a little bit more in depth. I'm going to have you flip over to page 62. I'm going to cover the first material weakness on the financial statements, just so that you know what it is, and then Alexis is going to go over the federal awards with you. The clerk of the district court had some long outstanding checks. Well, through the various years, or the last couple years, the state was always going to take them over to a different accounting program. And so they were going to have them wait to do that. Well, as things have come along and that they're still waiting for the state to come in and help them to get those outstanding checks cleared up, there is a formal procedure that they do need to go through, and the state is going to help them go through it here this year, and they're going to help the clerk of the district court get those outstanding checks taken care of. But unfortunately, it does get noted in your audit. Is there any questions about that? If there's not, then I'm going to turn it over to Alexis.
Good evening. So with single audits, there is a little bit of a difference between financial statement audits and single audits. With single audits, the federal government is pretty strict on what we have to look at, as well as what we have to consider a finding. So even things that seem relatively minute, which you might note on these next few pages, have to be noted since they meet certain criteria. So that first one, 2020-002, this is just related to documentation, making sure that everything that you are viewing records for with relation to these federal programs, you're keeping on file and storing it in a place that you guys know where to have access to. We did ultimately find all of the documentation, but there were a couple instances where we had to reach out to sometimes like a third party or something in order to find that documentation. The next one will be on page 63. This is related to subrecipient monitoring. So with subrecipient monitoring, which is those funds that you guys pass through to other entities, they need to have a sufficient amount of information so that they know how to operate the programs, they know what kind of compliance requirements apply to them, those sorts of things. And so the best and easiest way to do that is to have either a memorandum of understanding or a grant agreement that really nicely details all of that information for them. So that's things like the program name, the CFDA number or assistance listing number, things like that, so that they can go look up that information themselves if it's not directly contained in the agreement, just so they know what they need to be doing with the monies. The memorandum of understanding that was used didn't contain a few of those things, such as CFDA number, assistance listing number, things like that. In the future, we would recommend that if there is a template available from the state, you use that one, which there was this year. But easy fix, just to use the template if it's available, and then if there isn't one, use legal counsel or some other form to ensure that those agreements meet all the requirements. The next one is going to start on 63 and then transfer over to 64, and that is related to period of performance. So with CRF funding, it started on March 1st of 2020, and then original deadline was end of the year in 2020, and it ended up getting extended. But the issue that we had was related to the beginning. There were 2 expenses that were submitted before, they were incurred before March 1st. I believe it was February 28th, so it seems silly. I know that's a day, but if the grant says it starts March 1st, it starts March 1st. So that only came to a total of $122, as you'll see on page 64. So just make sure we're checking those expenditure documentations when we're turning them over to whoever's administering the program, so that we don't submit anything that doesn't fall within that period. The next one is going to be 2020-005, which is activities allowed or unallowed. So these are things that the grant says are either okay or not okay under the program. One of the issues was actually one of the same expenses that caused that period of performance finding. One of them that was submitted, I believe it was for $102, actually ended up getting canceled later on. I think it was back ordered or something of that nature, and then didn't ultimately get received, but it was still submitted under the program. So just making sure that we're not submitting anything that we aren't ultimately actually getting. The other aspect was with relation to some subrecipient expenditures. One of the subrecipients made use of some stipends or gift cards for individuals that were having to quarantine. They gave them those in order to pay for expenses while they were stuck in that quarantine. Gift cards are not typically a good idea with federal programs. They're usually frowned upon, especially since you want to have a receipt or an invoice or something to support it, and nothing was obtained from that. And then the additional funding also was not taken back if it wasn't all spent. So really just avoid gift cards if at all possible. And that was the two things that made up the 102 and then the 4716 that were submitted that we noted, and totals to 4818 under the program. We did work with management and determine that you guys had additional expenditures that hadn't been submitted under any other programs, any federal funding sources that could have been. So these were allowable expenditures during the year that you didn't use, so there won't be any need to return any money because you have additional uses that you could have had the funding for. Was there any questions for me on those?
Yeah, I know there were some issues with this. I talked to Darren at length about this. And, you know, in some ways, I understand what you're all saying, but this was kind of a moving target.
Oh,
For a
yes.
long time, no one knew what was going on.
No.
They changed the rules every other day.
Yes.
And, you know, when you're in a situation like that, I guess these kind of errors are just bound to occur, too.
It has been a
So-
rough year.
So I don't want to try to hold people really, really hardcore responsible for that and that sort of thing. And then a question I have for you, we are getting more virus relief funds, or I think Darren might already have them in the Treasury. And do you recommend a consultant for us to help run through that program?
I will say the counties that I've seen using consultants this year have had a lot easier time. It's a lot less stressful for your management and tends to be a little bit smoother throughout the year. So I can't
Sure.
tell you for sure whether you should or not, but it definitely seems to be easier from my
But this time
perspective.
here, we have, what, 4 years to spend the money?
Yes, you have more time.
Instead of a few short months.
Yes, and they will hopefully not be releasing things after you've already spent the funding this time, so. But we understand that it was a difficult year and you guys reacted as best you can. This is definitely not the norm.
Okay. Commissioners, any questions or concerns?
Like Commissioner Butch said, I'm sure we're not the only one. I'm sure it was all a learning experience for everyone, and it still is.
Yes.
Correct? Okay, thank you. That's all I have. It was a disaster. It caught everybody. Just, yeah.
We'd have had more time to spend the
Right.
money. I mean,
Yes.
we were down to the last day and the last hours to get the money spent. Now this time we have 4 years, right? Is it 4 years or 5 years?
To 2024.
Through 2024? So 4 years versus months.
Yeah.
That's all I had.
Yeah, okay.
I'm just going to direct you back to that loose leaf letter I talked about. As we're going back there, I will say thank you. We do want to thank everybody at Ellis County and management and everything that did look up all the questions and everything for us. It did take some it did take a lot of their time and their effort and everything. Everything we asked for was delivered to us in a very timely manner. So again, we do appreciate that, and that's one of the things we also look at when going through the single audit in that type of area. On the governance letter, this basically, we come back to you as the county commissioners and tell you of anything maybe that we discussed with management that you would not usually be aware of. We also talk about the regulatory basis of accounting, that we did you did everything in conformity with that. There were no uncorrected or misstatements that we needed to note. There are some journal entries that we will give to the county to make, but again, nothing unusual in that respect. We're underneath the second page, underneath audit recommendations, just some items that maybe we'd seen with COVID, unfortunately being around, and remember we audited 2020, not 2021, so I know some things have changed and things like that. We did discuss with them that, we do highly stress that that weekly deposits be made to the treasurer's office, maybe not keep any cash on hand over the weekend. Again, just good business practices to do with that. And at the end of the year, just want to make sure that all money's turned over to the treasurer's office so that they can account for it in a timely fashion. That does get a little, it is a little stressful on December 31st to make sure everything does get into the books. Not that we had any specific instances or anything, but there was a couple, deposits maybe that were a couple weeks out. We just wanted to remind everyone that we would like them weekly. And then we were looking at some bank reconciliations. And again, this kind of comes back to probably the first comment that we made. As departments get money in, a lot of it comes in by ACH, so you're not really getting the cash, you're not getting a check or anything. And so if you don't turn over those off-recs to the county treasurer's office in a timely manner, sometimes you can't really, I would not be able to tell if I was the county treasurer, if that was, for EMS, if it was for the health department, if it was for hazardous waste. It's hard to tell because it just comes in as state of Kansas. And so they have to go back, they have to ask everybody whose money it may or may not be, so they can receipt it to the proper area. And so, again, just make sure that, as we're going through the bank reconciliations, if we get all those deposits in, off-recs in, that will alleviate the problem. That will help them out in the future, too. Are there any questions on that?
Nope.
I have none, Melissa.
Okay. And again, we just wanted to thank you for the opportunity to present the report to you and to thank you.
And thank you both.
Yep, thanks for the good work.
Can I add something real quick? I just wanted to personally thank Melissa and Alexis for working with us over the last several months. I think we started back in May. Alexis was very thorough in her report for the single audit of the CARES funding that we did. And I personally apologize for the amount of time it took for us to research and find documentation and get that to us. It was a lot of help from the clerk's office, of them spending time trying to get documents and then us forwarding it on. HR had to print off payroll reports. We have literally, I would say, 4 to 5 feet thick of a stack of documents for the receipts and everything that we've got. So thank you for the work that you guys did with us this year. And I apologize for the amount of time for us getting all that to you. I know Melissa said that we were timely in working with her. I felt like I was always behind, rushing around trying to ask for help, but I'm glad it's over. So.
Okay, our next agenda item is the Northwest Kansas Community Corrections update. Aaron? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Erin Geist, Director of Northwest Kansas Community Corrections. I was here, November of 2020 with our former director, John Tremblay. At that point, we had asked the county for $20,000 worth of CARES funding for oral drug testing, which was approved, and I want to thank you Those oral drug tests have lasted us almost a year now. We actually still have another box left. Allowed us to continue drug testing safely, even through November and December of last year when Ellis County was at the peak of COVID cases. So thank you very much for that. In addition, we've also received several PPE supplies from the county over the past year, which has helped staff. The next thing was, in June of this year, we asked to be added on to the county's panic alarm system, which was approved. We paid for the expenses associated with that, and the IT from the county came up and got us set up. We requested that after an incident that occurred in December of 2020 when a client came in armed with knives, requesting to get into our facility. So I want to thank you guys again for allowing us to get onto that panic program. I'm not here today to ask for any money or ask for anything, just here to give you an update on our in-house services and programs. I gave you kind of an outline with some additional information on the programs that we provide. All of these programs are in-house programs, meaning the clients receive the service at our office, so they don't have to travel elsewhere to do so. Our Batters Intervention Program, or BIP, is for offenders who have a history of domestic violence-related offenses. The class is held on Tuesday evenings from 6 to 9 p.m. So again, that panic alarm system has come in handy for those facilitators. It's 2 females that facilitate the program in a room full of approximately 12 to 20, usually male offenders. We do often have a female. But so just adding that extra sense of security to the work that they're doing in a basement of the community corrections office late at night. The service is provided for people on community corrections, parole supervision, court services, and anyone else that the court requests to get an evaluation and is deemed appropriate for the program. Another in-house program that we have is the Cognitive Perspectives Program. This is for high-risk, high-needs individuals on community corrections, aims at changing antisocial attitudes and behaviors and getting people to stop and think about why they do what they do, and change that in the future. This is also available to community corrections, parole, court services, and any other agencies that want to refer someone to our program. Financial Management Program uses components from the Dave Ramsey Financial Peace University. We help clients build a budget to prioritize their spending, help get court costs paid, also helps them become more financially responsible. We have the methamphetamine specific group treatment program. It's for high-risk methamphetamine users. They meet twice a week at our office, and then they're drug tested 3 times a week at minimum. We partner with Smoky Hill Foundation to provide the facilitation for that group. The last one on my list is the GED program. This is actually not a service that Community Corrections provides. We really just provide the space. Colby Community College Adult Education Department hosts that Monday and Wednesday evenings from 6 to 10 p.m. It's open to anyone, so you don't have to be on supervision or involved with the court system. They just get signed up with the adult education program through Colby Community College. And then the handout that I gave you all has Nance Munderlow's contact information. She's the director of that program. So if any of you come in contact with someone who could use a GED, I think it's a very beneficial thing for our community. Lastly, Mr. Younger is a board member, and we appreciate him serving on our board. He's been a really great addition. My goal would be to come back yearly and just kind of give you guys an update on what we're doing at Community Corrections, any changes. But certainly if you have questions in the meantime, Mr. Younger can bring those to my attention at board meetings, and I'm happy to come back more often if need be.
Yeah, Aaron, with this GED program, do you find a lot of your clientele does not have a high school diploma?
Yes.
Okay. They just tend to drop out and get in trouble.
Yes, and that GED program is beneficial with then setting them up with Kansas Works for some help with employment, or getting some like technical college assistance degrees.
Oh, well, that's good.
Yeah. other questions?
Any questions, Commissioners?
Keep
you
up the
for
good
coming.
work.
Thank you for your time.
Hold on, keep up the good work.
Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you.
Okay, our next agenda item is a skid steer purchase. Brendan?
Good evening, Commissioners. Brendan McKay, Ellis County Public Works Director. So before us tonight, there's two options out there for us that will work with what we need. It would be the CAT 259D3 compact track loader. Put skid steer because most people know what a skid steer is. We put compact track loader up the top. A lot of people's vision of what that is different than what it really is. It's a skid steer with tracks. It's the only change. The other option would be a Bobcat T76. The CAT one, it is more expensive up front, but we'll receive that increase in price on our resale value. The Bobcat is lower price, but in order to utilize that piece of equipment, we'll need to get a larger bucket, which is around $1,000, and then we'll also need to increase the axles bare minimum on our current trailer, which are about $2,000 a piece. So that's about $5,000 in funding additional that we'd have to put into the Bobcat to go with that option if that's your decision. The CAT 259 is an exact, it fits the same footprint that we have our current machine, weight, lift, everything, just has wider tracks than what we currently have. The Bobcat, in order to meet the flow rate that we need for our milling attachments for when we have to mill out bumps in the pavement on Old 40 or any of our other paved or hard surfaced roads, we have to go up to a larger size Bobcat machine. Larger size, bigger is not always better. If you're cutting a loaf of bread, do you use a machete or do you use a bread knife?
I prefer the machete.
Well, then let's go with a Bobcat. But the areas we work in, being bigger isn't necessarily a benefit to us because there are height clearances and width clearances that we need to work around that going to the bigger machine, it just wouldn't fit in all the spaces we put it into. The other thing with the CAT is we have the software to connect to it, so when it is giving us issues, we can do a lot of the troubleshooting work on our own before we need to call in outside help or mechanics. We don't have that currently for the Bobcat. We could. It would be an additional couple $1,000s for that equipment as well. So ultimately, the decision's up to you three. I know my employees would be happy with any option provided because the current one we have it's getting tired.
Now, you did say the CAT would have a better value at the end,
Yes, sir.
and how much better?
It'd be around $10,000 from seeing what the used prices go for. Cats generally cost $10,000 to $15,000 more than a Bobcat equivalent, but the resale is $10,000 to $15,000 more for comparable models.
Okay,
So it's roughly the same either way. Either you pay less up front and you get less on the return, or you pay a little more up front and you get that same amount back on the return.
and with the Bobcat, there'd be additional expenses to equip it
Correct.
right?
And then we were unable to test the T76. They did not have one in the Great Bend store or here locally that we could even sit in. We're able to send operators down to Great Bend to test the 259 here about a month ago. And my operators, they really cared. They really liked it. It quiet cab. Both the Bobcat and the new CAT sit on rubber mounted isolators. So the cab is rubber mounted to the frame. That cuts down the noise inside the cab and also vibrations that travel through the tracks. The Bobcat says it has that, but without being able to see it in person, I couldn't tell you the quality of it or how it is. But I know compared to the one we currently have, my operators liked it because they didn't have to wear earplugs inside the machine like they do currently.
Commissioner Hazelhorse, what's your opinion on these?
Well, I researched it quite a bit too after what Brendan sent me, and then I did some more. On the CAT, it holds, on hydraulic fluid alone, it's 10 gallons. The Bobcat's 5. In all reality, we should never have to change the hydraulic fluid on the CAT, recommended 6,000 hours. Bobcat's every 1,000. The CAT does have on the tracks itself, it has ride control on that, they call it.
Yep. And it's got a telescopic
Sensitive.
suspension.
Sensitive ride control on tracks only.
Yeah,
I couldn't find where, unless you did, I couldn't find that Bobcat offers
it
that.
does not. So that's a telescoping suspension on there.
It is, they
So
like
it rides smoother for the operator. I've heard some complaints from others that, pardon my language, it's kind of like when you're loading something, it feels like it's going on its nose, or call it stepping on its toes. When you got something too heavy, too high up in the air, and the machine feels like it's going to fall forward. With that telescopic suspension on the Cat, it'll get on its toes, or with an operator from used to a different machine, it'll feel like it's on its toes and it's going to go over, but it's still not maxed out yet. So that takes some getting used to. But with the loads we're carrying on it, we shouldn't ever run into that issue. That's more loading up big hay bales is when people notice that machine feel like it's on its toes.
On the Bobcat, we never did get a time frame, did we, when they could even have us one?
He didn't have one. He thought hopefully after the first of the year, they might have one potentially available.
And Cat was 60 days if you ordered one?
That's what their thought was on it.
5 to 60, it said.
Yep.
Okay.
And Brendan's correct on the resale. I mean, you can figure 20 to 25% more on any given day on a Cat machine, just because it's the Caterpillar name. I don't know if they're 25% better, but that Caterpillar name we found out on graders.
So ultimately, the Cat would be a better buy.
It would, if we have to buy a different trailer, a new trailer is going to be about 8,400. Fixing ours is just under 5,000. So.
Yeah, and that's the bare minimum. That's axles. They recommend leaf springs too, to increase that size to keep that difference. It's not absolutely necessary, but even with those increased axles, we'd be right at the maximum capacity again on it. Because the Bobcat is like 1,700 pounds heavier than the Cat, and about 1,400 pounds heavier than our current machine.
Well, and the other thing is the other Bobcat that you priced, maybe you didn't share that with them yet, the one that was the same size as the Cat.
It won't meet the hydraulic flow rate.
Didn't have enough hydraulic flow to run our attachments. That's why Bobcat had to go to the next size.
Correct.
Okay, so,
Standard one they had only had 14 or 17 gallon, wasn't it?
It was 19.6 if I'm not mistaken.
19.6.
And we need the 30 gallon per minute flow rate that the milling machine that we have and the one we borrow from the city of Hayes requires.
okay. Commissioner Neal, questions?
Yeah, like I say, I looked at the CAT also, and with the bigger capacity on the hydraulics, it's gonna run
Cooler.
a lot cooler, last longer,
Bigger hydraulic reservoir.
right?
And there's a lot more room inside the engine bay on it. We opened it up and you can actually put your hand in there, which a little surprising to see.
Yeah, most of them on Bobcat or on any skid steer, you can't really
Exactly.
most of the time.
And the cab on the 259 is the same size as the cab on the 289, the larger model of Cat. So my operators were happy with so much room in there.
And to look in the future, do we want to put an axle under a trailer? We got the expense of that, then we got more tires. If we can use what we have with the, good suspension on this, our operator's going to go home like he came to work, not beat up, and have more productivity that way. But, yeah.
Okay. Commissioners, do I hear a motion?
I moved to purchase the 2022 Cat 259 D3 compact loader from Foley Equipment for the amount of $38,486.16.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I guess it's noted in there that we're trading our other one in. It's not noted in the motion, but I guess
Yeah,
that's.
sorry about
That's
that.
fine, isn't it, how it is? I mean, we know we're trading it in.
No, we're trading
Mr.
it in.
Jeter, is that okay?
okay.
Yeah, okay. Because
Okay,
it's not noted we're trading it in, but okay. Thank you.
okay, so motion passes 3-0.
All righty, thank you. I'll get the PO finished up and turned into you.
The next agenda item is the 401 retirement contribution options. Darren?
Good evening, Commission. Darren Myers, County Administrator. As the Commission is aware, several months ago, when we finalized the budget, or in the preparation of finalizing the budget, the Commission approved funding for a new retirement contribution program. Since then, I've worked with HR, and we have met with Capers 457 to finalize to start finalizing an agreement to move into that program. And there's a couple items within the program that we wanted a little bit more direction from the commission as how to you would like us to proceed with that. And I couldn't really type it all in here because it would have probably doubled the space, but I'd go over each bullet point with you as to why we're making the recommendations we're having and answer any questions, if that's all right. The first part of it is the timing and frequency. We would stay with the 24 payroll periods per year, which is the same that we do for all the other benefits. So all the individuals that currently pay into their CAPERS 457, or when they have deductions paid out of their health insurance, it's paid out of 24 payroll periods per year, not the 26 that we actually have. So that would stay just for consistency. The employee participation, just for clarification, that we want to make sure the commission would allow it to allow full-time and part-time employees to contribute and not just limited to full-time. Vesting is that once the individual signs up for the program, they are automatically they are vested right away from day one. The reason for that is there's several options that you could do, from 1 year to 5 years, or you could do 10% every year for 10 years until you're fully vested. Once we asked as to why the different options are out there, the main reason that most of the people automatically choose vested once you start day one, it's not that Ellis County won't get that money back, the money stays with the state. So if somebody works for 2 years and they're fully vested, they get to walk away with their contributions that they put in, and we don't turn it over to the state. We felt that was better for the employee no matter how long they're here. If an individual starts this now and they retire in 2 years, it's fair for them to be able to keep what amount of money they have into it. That was the reasoning for their contributions, which is what the commission has already inquired about in the past, was a $15 and a $30 match. If an employee puts a minimum of $15 up to $29.99, the county will match $15. And as long as an employee contributes at least $30 or above, the county will match that as $30 as well. So the maximum that an employee can get for those 24 pay periods per year would be the $30 matching that they would match with their own. So it'd be about $60 a check. And in the attachment that's also in the agenda, as well as confirming with, I visited with Worth Financial, if you put about $60 away per pay period for 30 years at about an annual rate return of 8%, they could roughly have about $230,000 to $240,000 in their savings after a 30-year career with us. And you would think after the years progress, you get pay raises, you could increase that over time, or maybe in the future the county can do another step into the future. But that's a pretty good retirement portion for the employees after they retire here. Rollovers, we would permit them to be allowed. That was if somebody they transferred to Ellis County, they had this program, or they came from Mass Mutual, Hartford, or another, that they could dump their plans into this plan. And then the compensation paid after employment, basically just for the ease of payroll afterwards. If an employee would terminate their employment, retire, et cetera, their last check would be their last contribution that they would put into it. Some other companies allow you to extend your employment with the use of vacation, sick leave, extended leave. We do not allow that. So it was best just to terminate it at that last pay period. And those are the biggest options that were out there, or those were the options that are out there with the agreement. What the next step would be is I would fill out the agreement with the state, and Mr. Jeter's already reviewed it. We would fill out the agreement, send it off to CAPERS for review and approval. Once we get it back, the commission would pass a resolution for adoption, and during the open enrollment period, employees would be able to select their contribution percentages and start as of January 1st of 2022.
Do you anticipate most employees will be participating in this?
We had this conversation, and I wish I would have checked at that point, because we talked about the $15, the $30, and the $45 limits, and the commission kind of challenged that hopefully the employees would higher utilize this. When I was meeting with Worth Financial about just shopping around and see what other options we had, to my surprise, we only had, I don't remember the exact number, 25 employees taking advantage of it. As of the way it sits now with just the Capers 457. Hopefully, once we get the 401A program involved, which is the 401A is what the county will contribute in, the employee will put theirs in the 457. I would hope we would have a spike in that. An interesting piece, and I don't remember the countries, but when I was visiting with Worth Financial, they discussed the option of auto enroll. So once a new employee would start, you would automatically be enrolled into this unless you would choose to opt out. Just a recent study that they did over in Europe, there's 2 countries on their organ donors for their driver's license. One country had it automatically as you were opting in as a organ donor, and they had 98% of their driver's license holders in the country were organ donors. I think it was France, and then a country right next to them, somewhere over there in Europe, you had to actually check the box to opt in to be an organ donor, and they only had 17% compliance. So that's an option that we could also consider in the future once we look into this more, if we wanted to have auto enroll for new employees or not, because there is a significant difference. You think just checking a box, there wouldn't be that much of a difference, but there was a significant difference in between the two. But yeah, only about 25 members, but I know I spoke to one individual today that they're getting ready to switch, but I can report back to the commission on how much that would increase after we go through the enrollment next couple months.
Well, I think it's something good we can do here for the employees. It could definitely help retain some employees and increase their wealth at the same time. So I don't really have any problems with any of these bullets you put on here. Commissioner Younger?
I'm the same way, dude. I guess, has anybody sat down with them in a whole room and kind of explained to them and tell them what it's going to be for their future?
So with our new HR coordinator, that's going to be one of the benefits of her being able to be more knowledgeable about the different options, benefits that that are available to our employees. For the October 11th in-service that we're still trying to figure out if we're going to make that determination on Thursday with staff. But Lynn from Capers 457 is scheduled to be here and give a presentation to all the employees as to why they should do it and answer questions, so that way we can get that open enrollment period open and then more can sign up if they want to.
Commissioner Hazelhorst?
I think it's a good deal.
Yep. Okay, proceed, Darren.
I will get the agreement sent off to the state.
The next agenda item is the 718 Main Street parking lot improvements. Darren?
As the commission is aware, we've been working on trying to get the parking lot out in the outside here to the east repaved. And it's been kind of on our checklist of to-do items for many years. We've been working with Benmore Architects out of Manhattan to look at what it would take to tear down the building and extend the parking lot the way it is designed right up next to the building all the way down to Oak Street. If we were to do that, it would give us an increase of parking of about 30 spaces. And right now, all of our employees kind of, I wouldn't say fight for a spot to get closer to the building, because there's really nothing, there's those key spaces that are right out there with what we call the asphalt area. And you can come down here multiple times during the day. I was actually trying to do it the last couple of days. I was going to shoot some emails to the commission as the pictures that I took being down here. And several times throughout the day, there's no parking. People are parking down the street, on 8th Street, trying to find location. That's not only has a negative impact for us, because not everybody likes to come to this building to pay their taxes, but we also have tenants up on the second story that they have business that they need to attend to. Tax season is very busy for them. and it's hard for some of their clients to be able to park out in the parking lot as well. So we, as the commission is aware, we've been looking at trying to get that done for many years. We've identified the funding for it. And I had it bid out, so that way we would do it in basically 2 phases. The bank building area first would be torn down and repaved, and wait for the 7 to 10 days for the concrete to cure, open that parking lot up. And then basically the space between there and the building is another asphalt parking lot. We would then tear that up and repave it in phase 2 while everybody was allowed to park on the further east side. And then part of that second phase was it's about a 40 by 120 foot section of asphalt on the south side of the house over here. In working with the project and then with the architect and visiting with Greg Herbert or in Buildings and Grounds, the suggestion was made about potentially talking to the owner of the house and seeing if he would be interested in buying the parking lot. So that way his tenants, the renters, would have a specific private parking spot that they could use instead of parking into all of our spots, which would then also increase the parking that we have available, and also put that lot back on the tax rolls that we would be getting a little bit more property tax off of, and give him a little bit more flexibility. He is interested in it, and if the commission is, if we approve all this as designed, I could contact him a little bit more, and Bill Jeter and I could go through the process basically the same as we just did with the sale of the trailer out at landfill. We could potentially have that piece of property sold within the next couple months, I'd say. And it would save us $38,000 from repaving that. So I'd stand for any questions.
And how many renters are in that house?
I think he said he had 7 tenants. I don't know how many apartments, but there's probably multiple bedrooms.
Sure. Okay.
And they don't really have any off-street parking except for there's a couple behind right off the alley, and then they park on the street. And he also owns the property across the street, but there's many apartment complexes right there, so the parking is limited.
Well, I believe when we moved into this building, we all anticipated parking could be an issue. So we need to get it resolved. And need to get something done. Commissioner Hazelhorst, thoughts?
I think it's a great idea, try to sell that off to them, and if we can, I talked to Darren earlier today about it too, and I think that'll be good. Get the bank tore down and clean that up, and
I forgot to mention, you had inquired in the past about us using our equipment to tear down the bank.
I was gonna bring that up next, thank you, but
Oh,
I guess
sorry.
Brendan is still there. I thought I seen him get up and walk out the door before.
So we talked with Ben and then with Paul Wertenberger in regards to that process. And M&D is a subcontractor for that portion of it. What they would like to do is, Shorty would like to use, for him to tear it down, what they're gonna do is haul it off onto his location, grind up all the building's concrete, and there's a big tunnel that's about 6 by 6 underneath it, the sidewalks, haul it all out to his place on his time, crush it up, and then they would use that and haul it back for the base, which reduced the price instead of buying a different type of aggregate for the base underneath the concrete. So that's the plan of what they would do with all the rubble out there, instead of us essentially saving the money by taking it out to the landfill and not having a charge. They would use that out of his property to crush it and bring it back.
Sounds fine.
Neil, any questions, concerns?
That works hand in hand. That'll be nice to do that, to crunch that. The question, I guess, I get by here, but I don't really pay attention. I see the handicap, there's only 2. Does that meet the ADA?
So if you look at our current parking lot, once you hit a certain amount of spaces, you have to have a certain amount of handicapped. Once we add all of these, you'll see that the drawing that's on here has more spaces than what we have.
Okay.
And then when we do the parking lot that's right over, the bigger one that's, you've already approved to seal and stripe, there'll be actually 2 more handicap spots over there. But once you add more spaces, parking, you have to add more handicap, and then you have to have ones also for the, the van, so you have more room around them, which I believe is what's right out here next to the trash dumpster.
Okay, gentlemen, do I hear a motion?
I move to approve the purchase order number 7578 to repair east parking lots located at the admin building.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0. Okay, County Administrator report. Darren.
I do not have anything.
County Commissioner reports. Neil.
I had attended the, the meeting, the Northwest Highway and County Commissioners. I attended that Wednesday. Ellis County was mentioned a lot, which was good, made us feel good, the ones that were there. And then I also attended the Ellis City meeting, and when the big boy came through, they got the one book, the limited edition. They were number 90, which was pretty nice for Ellis. So Ellis Railroaders, and that's all I have.
Okay. Commissioner Dean.
Attended the same meeting Neil did. It was well attended by our county. And like I say, we were mentioned a lot on the different grants that we've got, Northwest Corridor Project, see the 41st project, or not 41st, 55th intersection project. And yeah, we got a lot of publicity. You can tell our folks are doing a good job on grant writing and everything. A lot of these other counties hadn't gotten any of this money, and I guess they were a little scolded. Is that the best way to put it, Brendan? Maybe them other counties were scolded for not taking advantage of all the things that Ellis County has been doing. Because a lot of them always say, well, Ellis County gets all the money. Well, come to find out, Ellis County applies for the money.
Well, sure.
On the bridge projects and the cost share, and a lot of these other counties don't. So, yeah, we kind of got a lot of the headlines, like Neil said. They talked about us a lot.
We got a lot of attaboys. I mean, we got
We did.
a good
So
staff.
thank you to all of our
people.
county employees for writing grants and taking advantage of all that. It's good. So
Yeah.
good work to all you guys.
We have very good staff. Everybody's doing an excellent job. I appreciate it.
Okay. I did attend the open house out at the environmental office, and a very nice facility out there. They give me a good personal tour and a walkthrough of it, and it's going to suit Ellis County really well. We can really be proud of that. I think operations are just going to be excellent out there. Tomorrow morning, I do have a meeting with Darren to discuss some of the county issues we have facing us. So that's all I have.
Thank you.
No further business. The meeting will adjourn at 6:02.